March 18th, 1945. Twilight drapes the banks of the Rhine River near Viersen, Germany. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of mud and the promise of rain. The ground, churned by weeks of boots and wheels, clings to every step like wet cement. In the fading light, shadows come alive. Massive shapes lumber into view, Sherman tanks grinding forward, their engines snarling like beasts roused from slumber. Artillery pieces roll into position, crews barking orders in crisp, unmistakable American drawls. Trucks laden with supplies rumble past, kicking up clouds of dust and grit. From afar, a German reconnaissance plane might glimpse the build-up. 2 full US infantry divisions, some 40,000 men strong, massing for a colossal push across the Rhine. Hitler's vaunted, impregnable barrier, the last natural defense of the Reich, is about to crumble here, in this quiet sector, north of Cologne. But creep closer, and the illusion unravels. Those tanks? Rubber husks, inflated by hand pumps and patched with haste. The artillery? Canvas stretched taut over wooden frames painted by artists with a meticulous eye for detail. The radio chatter crackling through the ether, scripts recited by mimics, feigning urgency and command, broadcast from makeshift stations hidden in the brush. This is no invasion force. This is a mirage. Captain Fred Fox, a former Broadway actor turned deception maestro, huddles in a canvas tent, scribbling notes for the next broadcast. His voice, soon to be amplified through hidden speakers, will boom across the valley. Charlie Company, advance to Grid 7, tanks in support. Nearby, Sergeant Bernie Bluestein cranks a sonic half-track, its 28 speakers ready to blast recordings of bridge construction, hammers on steel, shouts of labour that will echo for miles, drawing unseen eyes and ears. Across the river, German Oberst Wilhelm Ritter scans the horizon through scratched field glasses. His scouts report frantic Allied activity, divisions assembling, bridges rising from the mist. He issues urgent orders, divert panzer reserves, reinforce the line at Viersen. But it's a feint. The real 9th US Army crossing unfolds 10 miles north near Wesel, where troops slip over the water with scant resistance. One Ghost Army veteran, Private Gil Seltzer, later laughed, recalling a captured Nazi officer thumping a deflated tank. He couldn't believe it. Another sound engineer, John Chrisman, remembered the shelling. They pounded our dummies all night. We just patched and played on. By dawn on March 24th, the ruse holds firm. German guns blaze at phantoms, wasting shells on empty fields. Allied troops surge forward unhindered, their boots splashing across the Rhine's far bank. Lives spared, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. The river, once a wall, is now a gateway. This is Operation Viersen, the Ghost Army's magnum opus. In the dying days of World War II, a band of 1,100 artists, engineers and tricksters turned deception into victory, proving that in war the pen and the paintbrush can outwit the sword. For 50 years their story was locked away, a classified secret. But here, on the Rhine's muddy banks, they rewrote the rules of warfare, saving lives with nothing but illusion. To grasp why 1,100 unlikely warriors, painters, sound technicians, ad men, and actors were tasked with fooling the Wehrmacht on the Rhine's edge, you must rewind to the brutal calculus of early 1945. The Allies had clawed their way through Normandy's blood-soaked beaches, liberated Paris in a blaze of triumph, and endured the frozen hell of the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge. Now the Rhine River loomed, a 700-mile watery fortress, its swift currents and steep banks forming the Third Reich's final natural bulwark. Crossing it meant piercing the heart of Germany, hastening Hitler's end and the war's conclusion. But the stakes were dire. The Rhine's geography was a defender's dream. Swift waters, mined bridges, and fortified banks bristling with German guns. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commanding Army Group B, had massed reserves, panzer divisions, Waffen-SS units, and seasoned infantry poised to counterpunch any bridgehead. Ultra-intercepts, the Allies' secret weapon of decoded German communications, painted a grim picture. The Wehrmacht was battered, but not broken, ready to bleed invaders dry. Deception became the Allies' trump card. The British had mastered it in 1942 at El Alamein, where General Bernard Montgomery's Operation Bertram used dummy tanks, fake radio traffic, and even a staged pipeline to mislead Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps. The ruse turned the tide, proving illusions could shift battles. American planners, watching closely, saw the potential. As the US entered the war post-Pearl Harbor, Colonel Billy Harris, a strategist, and Major Ralph Ingersoll, a journalist-turned-officer, pitched a bold idea: a dedicated deception unit, mobile and multimedia, to conjure phantom armies and misdirect the enemy. General Jacob Devers, commanding the 6th Army Group, greenlit it. On January 20th, 1944, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army, was born at Camp Forest, Tennessee. By March 1945, the Ghosts were seasoned performers. They'd played a starring role in Operation Fortitude, faking Patton's army at Pas-de-Calais to shield D-Day's Normandy landings. They'd diverted German forces at Brest, Luxembourg, and the Hürtgen Forest, saving thousands by drawing fire to decoys. Now, with the war's end tantalizingly close, the Rhine crossing demanded their greatest act yet. Operation Viersen, conceived by Lieutenant Colonel Merrick H. Truly under Colonel Harry L. Reeder's command. The mission was clear: impersonate the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions totaling 40,000 men around Viersen, 10 miles south of the real crossing at Wesel, part of Operation Plunder led by Montgomery's 21st Army Group. The goal? Convince von Rundstedt that the main Allied thrust would hit north of Wesel, with a secondary feint at Krefeld, splitting German reserves and easing the true assault. 9th Army G2 intelligence later confirmed. Operation Viersen materially assisted in deceiving the enemy as to the actual points of crossing. The strategic context was unforgiving. The Rhine wasn't just a river, it was a psychological barrier, the Reich's last stand. Failure could prolong the war, costing tens of thousands of lives. The Ghosts, led by Reeder, a grizzled North Africa veteran with a no-nonsense mustache, trained relentlessly. From US deserts to English moors, they practiced inflating decoys under simulated fire, mixing soundscapes and scripting radio plays. Their roster was a who's who of creativity. Ellsworth Kelly, destined for art fame, Bill Blass, future fashion icon, Hilton Rayleigh, Amelia Earhart's promoter. Recruited from art schools, ad agencies, and theatres, they weren't soldiers by trade, but illusionists by talent. Intelligence was patchy. Aerial reconnaissance spotted German troop movements, but ground truth was elusive. The Ghosts operated in the fog of war, often just yards from the front, with no heavy weapons, only sidearms and wits. Veteran Seymour Nussenbaum, a painter who served in the camouflage unit, reflected on the unit's mission. Our mission was to fool the enemy, to put on a big act. He described it as like putting on a big production, where they decoyed as many as 20,000 men in some cases. Nussenbaum added that the goal was to drive the Germans crazy, highlighting the psychological edge they sought. Viersen wasn't a sideshow. It was a linchpin in the Allies' endgame, a high-stakes gambit to crack the Rhine and hasten victory. The Ghost Army, with their inflatable tanks and scripted lies, stood ready to make history, or vanish trying. The Ghost Army wasn't your typical outfit. No tanks, no artillery, no infantry charges. Just 1,100 men split into 4 specialized platoons, each a cog in a machine of make-believe, designed to conjure entire divisions from thin air. For Operation Viersen, they deployed a full arsenal of deception, honed over a year of daring operations. Visual deception led the charge. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers, artists like Arthur Singer and Victor Dowd, trained to paint not canvases but illusions. Their tools, hundreds of rubber decoys, M4 Sherman tanks, M7 Priest artillery, jeeps, trucks, even liaison planes. Each division they mimicked boasted nearly 100 dummies, laid out in authentic bivouacs with tents, laundry lines and fake latrines to fool Luftwaffe scouts. They camouflaged imperfectly, deliberately, so Germans would spot the build-up. Gasoline-powered compressors hissed as decoys swelled in under 30 minutes, painted with meticulous details, tread marks, unit insignia, even simulated shadows. One veteran recalled, "We'd smear mud on them for realism, too clean, and they'd look fake." Aerial photos later confirmed the setups were so convincing, even Allied planners sometimes mistook them for real. In Viersen, they deployed over 600 decoys across fields and woods, creating the illusion of 2 sprawling divisions. Soldiers in fake uniforms wearing bogus shoulder patches of the 30th and 79th Divisions milled about visibly. Jeeps, rigged with oversized antennas to mimic command vehicles, crisscrossed the area. "We wanted the Germans to see us," said Private Al Albrecht, "just not the truth." Sonic wizards from the 3,132nd Signal Service Company amplified the charade. Engineers from Bell Labs and theatre techs like John Chrisman rigged half-tracks with 28 high-powered speakers capable of blasting 15,000 watts of pre-recorded mayhem. Their library, sourced from Fort Knox, included tank engines revving, troops marching, and construction crews hammering bridges. Mixed like a Hollywood soundtrack, these sonic deceptions could simulate 40,000 men on the move, audible 15 miles away. For Viersen, they played loops of bridge building, clanging steel, shouting foremen, suggesting pontoons rising across the Rhine. Flash canisters mimicked artillery muzzle flashes, drawing German counterfire. "We'd blast all night, drawing shells while real engineers worked safely elsewhere," Chrisman recalled. To sell the lie, actual bridging units attached to the Ghosts built partial real spans, visible but incomplete, adding credibility. The Germans, hearing and seeing activity, assumed a crossing was imminent. One night, a sonic truck broke down mid-broadcast. The crew swapped it under shellfire, keeping the illusion alive. The radio spoofers were the voice of the operation, mimicking the fists, unique Morse code styles, of real units. Operators trained to impersonate colonels and generals, broadcast fake traffic nets, supply delays, troop dispositions, heated command arguments. "Convoy stalled at Grid 9. Request air cover," one might tap, luring German Abwehr listeners to empty ambushes. They used scripts based on real unit chatter, complete with regional accents and slang for authenticity. In Viersen, they simulated the 30th and 79th Division's radio nets, flooding the airwaves with orders suggesting an imminent assault. "We were actors playing generals," said radio operator Ed Bio. The Germans ate it up. The final touch was human. Special effects teams, actors and showmen, posed as MPs, generals and staff officers. They drove jeeps with fake markings, inspected decoy sites, and spread rumours in nearby French and Belgian towns. "The 30th's crossing tonight," one might whisper to a cafe owner, knowing German spies lurked. Fake headquarters buzzed with officers barking orders, flashlights mimicking camp activity at night. Even non-specialists pitched in, patching decoys under shell fire or driving supply runs to nowhere. Loose lips sink ships. Ours built phantom fleets, quipped Captain Freddie Fox. Training was grueling, blending boot camp with Broadway. From Camp Pine, New York to English moors near Stratford-upon-Avon, the ghosts rehearsed under simulated fire, inflating decoys while enemy mortars popped nearby. They rappelled cliffs, mixed soundtracks, and memorized radio codes. Risks were real. With only sidearms, they faced shelling and patrols. Shrapnel scarred many. Some operations saw wounded. "We were defenceless but for our brains," said Lieutenant William Aliapoulos. Veteran Gil Seltzer, a lieutenant who led a platoon in the unit, described the tactic's impact. "For instance, when the Rhine River was crossed, we were able to get the German army to assemble opposite us, firing at us, and when the actual crossing took place, it was a relatively easy thing, as far as I know." He emphasized the modesty of their role. "They say we saved 30,000 lives. I don't know about that. We were just doing our jobs." Seltzer also noted, "We are credited with saving as many as 30,000 men, which I think is an exaggeration, but if we saved one life, it was worth it." Victor Dowd, an artist in the camouflage unit, reflected on the creativity involved. "We were like a travelling road show. We'd set up our inflatables and make the Germans think there was a whole army there." In interviews, Dowd often spoke of the unit's unique blend of art and war. It was all about illusion, painting shadows, making rubber look like steel. George Dramis, a veteran from the Signal Company, shared in a video interview, "We had to make sure the sounds were right. One wrong track, and the whole thing falls apart." He described the danger. "Shells were coming in, but we kept playing those records. It was crazy, but it worked. For Viersen, these tactics were no experiment. They were a perfected weapon, low tech but lethal. A deflated tank cost pennies, a real one, lives." Operation Viersen played out like a meticulously scripted play, unfolding from March 18th to March 24th, 1945, under the cloak of night to evade prying German eyes. It was the Ghost Army's grand finale, a 7-day performance of deception on a scale unmatched in their campaign. On March 18th, Ghost Army units arrived from rear areas, deploying east and west of Viersen in fields and wooded patches. The 603rd Camouflage Engineers worked in darkness, inflating over 600 decoys, tanks, guns, trucks, positioned to mimic the sprawling camps of the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions. Gasoline compressors hummed softly, drowned by wind and river noise. Artists painted unit insignias under flashlight beams, smearing mud for realism. "We set up like a real army, but faster," recalled Private Victor Dowd. Sonic teams rolled in, positioning half-tracks with speakers aimed across the Rhine. Low-key recordings, troop movements, idle engines, began, building the illusion of an army settling in. Radio operators set up nets, broadcasting routine chatter to establish the fists of the fake divisions. "We started soft," said operator Ed Bio. "Let the Germans think we were just getting comfy." Atmospheric teams added life. Soldiers in fake uniforms drove jeeps, set up command posts, and lit campfires, visible but not too obvious. By dawn on March 19th, the stage was set, a phantom army poised to strike. The illusion grew bolder. Sonic trucks ramped up, blasting bridge-building sounds. Hammers on steel, shouts of, "Move that pontoon!" suggesting a crossing in progress. Flash canisters popped, mimicking artillery barrages. The 603rd repositioned decoys daily, simulating troop movements. "We deflate some tanks. Move 'em a mile. Re-inflate," said Al Albrecht. Kept the Luftwaffe guessing. Aerial recon flights buzzed overhead. German artillery probed, cratering fields. Shells shredded decoys, but crews patched them under cover, often in minutes. Radio traffic intensified. Supply convoy delayed at Grid 9. Urgent. Operators mimicked heated exchanges, suggesting a massive build-up. Actors in general uniforms drove openly, stopping at checkpoints for German spies to see. One night, a cafe rumour spread. The 30th's crossing tomorrow. It reached German ears, as planned. A close call came on March 20th. A German patrol crept near a dummy tank site, flashlights sweeping. Sonic trucks blared louder and shadows of soldiers moved in the dark. The patrol retreated, spooked. "We were actors in a war zone," said Bernie Bluestein. "One wrong move, and the curtain fell." By March 22nd, intelligence confirmed the ruse's success. German divisions shifted south, thinning Wessel's defences. Ultra-intercepts caught panicked orders from von Rundstedt's staff, redirecting panzers to Viersen. The ghosts doubled down. Sonic ops ran 24/7, simulating night construction. Decoys multiplied with fake artillery firing via flash simulators. Radio nets buzzed with urgent calls. Bridgehead established. Reinforce Grid 7. The Germans shelled harder, tearing up fields but hitting only air and canvas. Lieutenant William Aliapoulos, leading a decoy team, took shrapnel patching a tank, but kept working. "We were bait," he later said. "Every shell they fired at us missed the real guys." The real crossing at Wessel, part of Operation Plunder, began late on March 23rd, facing minimal opposition, thanks to the Ghosts' distraction. As Allied troops secured Wessel's bridgehead, the Ghosts pushed the charade to its peak. Sonic trucks blared advances. Radio operators faked breakthroughs. By midday, with the Rhine breached, the need for deception waned. The Ghosts deflated their decoys, packed their speakers, and vanished into the dawn, leaving craters and confusion. "We were gone before they knew," said Gil Seltzer. "Like ghosts, just as planned." The operation lasted 7 days, each moment a high-wire act. The Germans never suspected the army they fought was air and lies. Was Operation Viersen successful? Unequivocally, yes. The 9th Army's G2 intelligence report was blunt. The operation materially assisted in deceiving the enemy as to the actual points of crossing. German commanders, expecting a main thrust north of Wesel with a feint at Krefeld, diverted critical reserves, panzer units, infantry, artillery, to Viersen's phantom front. Ultra-intercepts confirmed the chaos. Von Rundstedt's staff scrambled, thinning Wessel's defences. The real crossing, part of Operation Plunder, faced almost no opposition, per contemporary accounts. By March 24th, thousands of Allied troops poured across the Rhine, securing bridgeheads that hastened Germany's collapse. The Ghost Army's tactics were a masterclass. Visual decoys lured Luftwaffe recon, sonic deception drew artillery fire, radio spoofing sowed strategic confusion, and atmospheric tricks sold the human element. Filmmaker Rick Beyer, who chronicled the unit, called Viersen completely successful, their finest hour. The Ghosts' overall campaign across 25 operations saved an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 Allied lives. Viersen was their crowning achievement, potentially sparing thousands in a single week. Casualties were light, but not absent. Stray shells wounded a handful, including Aliapoulos, who earned a Bronze Star for his Viersen efforts. The psychological toll was heavier. Constant shelling, the fear of discovery, and the weight of knowing a single mistake could unravel the ruse. "You didn't sleep," said John Chrisman. "You just waited for the next boom." After Viersen, the Ghost Army disbanded in July 1945. Their mission classified until 1996. Veterans like Bluestein, Chrisman and Nussenbaum kept silent, even from families. "I told my kids I blew up tanks," Victor Dowd laughed. "Never said they were rubber." Declassification sparked renewed interest, fueled by Bayer's 2013 PBS documentary and the Ghost Army Legacy Project. In March 2022, Congress awarded the unit the Congressional Gold Medal, finalized in a 2024 ceremony attended by survivors like Bluestein, now in their late 90s. House Speaker Mike Johnson quoted, "Few men had so great an influence with so little." The aftermath lingered. Exhibits at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans showcase artifacts, deflated tanks, vinyl records, sketches by artist veterans. Viersen's success wasn't just tactical. It accelerated VE Day, proving deception could tip the scales in a war of attrition. German prisoners, inspecting decoys post-capture, were dumbfounded. One officer, per Seltzer, laughed, "You Americans, war is a game to you." Operation Viersen was more than a military maneuver. It was a testament to human ingenuity in the crucible of war. In a conflict defined by tanks, bombs, and bloodshed, the Ghost Army fought with paint, sound, and lies, yet their impact was as real as any bullet. Historians rank Viersen as the unit's pinnacle. The US Army's official history calls it their best deceptive effort, a capstone to 25 operations that reshaped modern warfare. But beyond metrics, divisions diverted, lives saved, it's a parable of courage. Not the courage of storming beaches or charging bunkers, but of artists and engineers risking death to weave illusions. As Senator Ed Markey said at the 2024 medal ceremony, "These were men of muscle and mind who fought with creativity as their weapon." To bring the story to life, let's turn to the veterans themselves. Through oral histories, interviews, and reflections preserved by the Ghost Army Legacy Project and institutions like the Pritzker Military Museum, their voices echo the tension, humor, and pride of Viersen. These men, now centenarians or remembered in archives, offer personal glimpses into the operation's chaos and triumph. Seymour Nussenbaum, a camouflage specialist and painter, described the broader mission in a CBS News interview. The goal was to drive the Germans crazy. In a 2024 ceremony prelude, he likened their work to putting on a big production, and noting, "We have had in some cases as much as 20,000 men decoyed by us." Nussenbaum, who sketched constantly during the war, emphasized the theatrical aspect. Our mission was to fool the enemy, to put on a big act. He also reflected on the unit's creativity. "We were good at what we did, and we saved lives by making the enemy look the wrong way." Bernie Bluestein, a sonic deception operator, shared in oral histories how Viersen felt like a high-stakes performance. Involved from Normandy to the Rhine, he recalled the tension at Viersen. His unit's sound effects drew heavy fire, but the real crossing succeeded. "We had to make the Germans believe there was a whole division there. Tanks, bridges, everything," Bluestein said in an interview. "It was scary, but seeing it work was incredible." He added, reflecting on the unit's secrecy, "For years, I couldn't tell anyone what we did. It was all classified." Other veterans, like John Jarvie and Jack Macy, offered broader insights in Ghost Army Legacy Project interviews. While not directly quoting Viersen, their anecdotes on deception tactics, painting decoys under fire or scripting radio plays, echo the Rhine's challenges. Macy, a designer, spoke of the imagination required. "It was funny. It was distasteful. It was crazy." Jarvie, a radio specialist, recalled, "We'd broadcast arguments between officers to make it sound real. The Germans bought it every time." These interviews reveal the human side, fear masked by humor, ingenuity born of necessity. The Ghost's legacy endures. Their tactics inspired modern psychological operations, from Cold War ruses to Ukraine's use of decoys against Russian drones in 2022. Museums preserve their relics, a rubber tank, a crackling vinyl record, a sketch of a fake bivouac. But their true monument is in the silence of lives saved. Soldiers who crossed the Rhine because the Germans looked the wrong way. Walk the Rhine's banks today, near Viersen's quiet fields. The craters are gone, filled by time. The river flows gently, no longer a barrier. But pause and listen. You might hear echoes, the hiss of a compressor, the crackle of a fake radio, the ghostly shout of "Advance." The Ghost Army lingers, not in stone, but in the truth they crafted. In war, deception can be the sharpest blade, and the victory often belongs to those who dare to dream the impossible.